for inviting me. And a month ago, roughly, I think, which is when Dan approached me to speak at this event about the European Union and trying to gather some information about what it is that we're talking about, really. I was sort of quite cheerful at the time, sort of coming up with a few ideas of what I might say. And then, 2 weeks later, I was a little bit less cheerful. And then 3 weeks, even 1 week later after that, I was, by the time, very, very angry. And then now, quite frankly, I want to say about the EU that it makes me feel sick. Really physically sick. But since I'm here today and that I want to make this constructive for you as well, and I'm not going to just say that, so don't worry. But at the same time, I think it's important, if we are going to pretend that we're talking about objective truths about the European Union, it's important for me to put my card on the table and to say that fact, that at the moment, I read this article this morning, I think, by Owen Jones, who was saying, what we need to be doing as a left is actually reclaim the critique of the European Union. Reclaim it because it has been literally stolen from us by the right. And I couldn't agree more. And that is my own position, so at least from now on I can start speaking. Now, I think the Greek situation, and I'm not really going to only talk about it, but the Greek situation has a lot to teach you as well. And it's actually teaching us very much at the same time. But it can teach us things at two levels. The first is about the European Union itself. I mean, the one thing that is clear from all the saga of the last 5 months is first, that it doesn't seem to me that there is any scope left in the European Union to implement left politics. There is none. The second is worse than that. There is only not scope to implement left politics. The only alternative that there really is the one that they want to implement. By they, I mean not even governments as representatives of their people. What I mean by they is the technocrats in Brussels. That's they. And the capital and all the other interests that they are there to represent. The third thing that really, by that time I was sick, that's the moment where I became physically sick, is that I realized that not only is their project very clear, but they will crush, smash, humiliate whoever is not along those lines. So that is the three things about the European Union that I think the present conjuncture show us, and I think are extremely important to bear in mind. Now, on the domestic front, there are two further things. The thing that Syriza learns is, one, that either you go for a frontal clash, or there is nothing to be done. And the second thing, either you go for a frontal clash with the EU, or there is no strategy, really. And if you don't do that, I think the sadder thing that is currently happening in Greece is that you risk co-opting the left completely. In Greece, what has appeared is that not only was there not any credible Brexit plan, by credible, I mean a concrete set of proposals, people that had thought deeply about how we might take the country out of Greece, but also, not that, what we are doing today, a dialogue with the people. You cannot rally the people behind you if you haven't spoken to them about what they're about to face. And the other thing that is also sadder is that, and that's the reclaiming point is extremely important, is that I'm very sad to say so, but last night in his interview, Alexis Tsipras not only said that there was a plan B, a Brexit plan did not exist, what he effectively said is that the plan B is unviable. And by saying that, he is implying two things. The first, that the only plan B was Schäuble's plan, and somehow we are all in, that that's the only alternative. And the second thing is that he is actually within his own party negating the voice of an entire part of the party, which is called the Left Platform, that has been advocated for the Greek exit ever since we have been elected in January. So he's silencing his own party, which is an extremely big problem. At the moment, gladly, I mean, 2 days ago I was not only sick, but I was also crying. Now I'm a bit more optimistic because you might have seen, I haven't actually seen what's going on now, but today a large majority of the Syriza Central Committee voted to ask Parliament, the MPs in Syriza, to vote against this horrific package that is being passed now through Parliament, as it's completely against this referendum that we also hardly worked for, and a denial, therefore, of the popular mandate. So there is at least some scope that within Syriza there is an opposition, and I mean, it's, as far as I can see, it's the end of Syriza as we know it, for sure. The real question right now is whether the left platform is effectively going to take over, reclaim the party itself, or whether what is going to happen is that the left platform is going to be the one that actually breaks away from it. So, to see. But that is what we can learn already from the Greek situation, and I think it's a huge opportunity that you guys have to be able to talk in advance about all these referendum. It's something that you should use responsibly, it's good, and it's not happening under conditions of, you know, having basically the knife down your throat. Now, and if I overrun, just stop me. About the European Union itself. Now, I mean, there are two ways. Mainstream opinion usually sees the European Union in two ways, in terms of evaluating it, because that's what we're trying to do, right? The one is in terms of input legitimacy. And what do I mean by that? Input legitimacy, I mean the things that go into the European project, into how we articulate demands, and so on and so forth. And there, the main thing of the European project has always been actually the law. Human rights, separation of power, some kind of rule of law, etc., and democracy, but to a lesser extent, in the sense that, you know, the EU claims to have a dual democratic anchor, one of which is the directly elected European Parliament, and the other is the Council of Ministers, who supposedly creates a democratic legitimacy indirectly, because these are guys that we have elected at national level on disabilities. But this is the sort of input legitimacy of the European Union. Then the output legitimacy is more thinking about what the European Union actually does for us. What is it producing that is so marvelously good that we actually do not want to give it up, right? And there they are, the enormous, far, you know, policies and regulations and stuff that the EU produces. I mean, it's not only the economic and monetary union or the free movement of goods or persons and stuff. It's stuff like in the criminal law, social protection, asylum, etc., etc. Okay? So we could evaluate both of these things. How do we formulate the project? Do we actually have a say in it? And actually what it is producing, do we actually agree with it? And there actually, if we look a bit closer at all of these things, and that's where I'm just going to give you a few facts. I mean, they're a bit biased, I think, but still as unbiased as they can. The first, so input legitimacy. Let's take human rights, because, you know, right now, particularly in this country, there's this whole debate. We're not going to use our rights under EU law, we're going to use the Human Rights Act as well, and we're going to be basically rightsless, which, I mean, I don't think is possible, but anyway. Human rights in the EU, for example, the Charter of Human Rights that was adopted, for example, as the document that suddenly changed the nature of the EU. It doesn't apply to all of us. Right? The Charter is not something that all of us enjoy and can invoke just like that. No, we have to bring ourselves within what we call the scope, for example, of EU law. You have to be somehow involved in the EU business, if you want, right? In fact, because of the way, and these are legal arguments that I don't intend to actually go into, but because of the way the EU works, if let's say, your national constitution gives you more protection, this has to be displaced in favor of the EU standard, because we have uniformized the whole thing. Okay? So in some ways, I'm not suggesting that actually human rights haven't actually done something good sometimes, but also sometimes there's a clash this. So that's one example. Another one is this utterly commitment to the rule of law. Ever since the beginning of the crisis started, all of the mechanisms you have heard about, the European Stability Mechanism, the loans agreements, the powers of the European Central Bank, none of those are provided for in the treaties. None. Some of those led to amendment of the treaties, but this time, instead of going to the people, as usually we should do, because you have to, an amendment to the treaties have to be ratified. We saw how many referendums have failed from time to time. This time it was taken by an accelerated procedure by the European Council, which is basically the heads of states. So when the law didn't actually fit their own purposes, they managed to change it just like that and go ahead with what they wanted to do. Okay? And because I think I have to stop, I might. Should I continue a bit or should I stop? Because I could go on for a long time.
You can round off your point if you want.
Okay. And then then I'll round off my point. That was for the input legitimacy. Just again to give you, for example, an example for the output legitimacy, what is it the EU does. Apart from the fiasco of the MEU, but of course the UK is not in the Eurozone, so you don't have to deal with that problem. One simple example is, for example, the free movement of persons. Because everyone feels, of course, I'm a European product, I'm half French, half Greek, I was born in Luxembourg and I live in the UK. So of course I should be the first one, I've benefited, I've moved around. But the thing is, for example, that this is again one of the slightly things that have been not presented exactly as they are by the European Union. Because the free movement of persons is one thing, but it has to be seen, for example, in the context of all the other free movements, which are goods, services, and capital. Right? The EU has completely liberalized. There's the whole sort of economy, and of course part of that has involved some facilitation of free movement of persons, but believe me, the main benefactors of this open market have not been the people. And in fact, even if we look statistically, the number of people that are moving around, is not huge, because imagine you coming to work in Greece, if you don't speak Greek. I mean, it's always, there are all sorts of reasons even why people don't move, and this has not been the main benefactor of the EU. So my point is to wrap up, is that the EU has done things and has a lot of arguments, both input-wise and output-wise, to sort of justify itself, but actually what we should be doing is really scratching at the surface of that narrative to look beyond it and to start building the holistic picture, because of course if we look things in isolation, they all sound great, but if we put the puzzles together, we might start to formulate in a different vision. And this is, I think, what these coming months should be about, and I hope that the left will come with its own answers that are clearly distinguished from those that the right is actually currently articulating. Thank you.
Christine, you okay to speak? You are the last one, but we can take some discussion if you want first.
Okay, no, it's fine.
Okay, so the final speaker is Christina Delestafi, who's an independent socialist.
Can I ask not to be filmed, please, because of